Hi, I'm Julianne Sprague and welcome to How I Made It, a podcast from the Australian Financial Review, where I take you inside the world of the country's top entrepreneurs. Joining me today is Stephanie Miller, better known as Steph Claire Smith, the co-founder of fitness and wellness app Kick. Has users in more than 120 countries. She's a model and influencer. She's amassed 1.5 million Instagram followers, attracted nearly 8 million likes on TikTok, and is a podcaster in her own right, joining her co-founder Laura Henshaw with the Kick Pod. She hit the Young Rich list in 2021 with an estimated wealth of $36 million. Steph, welcome to How I Made It.
Hi, thank you.
I know, it makes you, it's like this wonderful big, look at all of these things that she's done. But let's not dwell on, not dwell, but we're not going to start at the end. Let's start at the beginning. Can I have a chat to you about what you were like as a kid?
So I grew up here in Melbourne, Australia, and I was always the sporty type. I had an older brother and I basically just wanted to give everything that he gave a go. And so I tried every sport under the sun. I was really into the arts, so I tried drama, singing, dancing, acting. Would love to sit my family and friends down for a performance whenever I got the opportunity to. So I was a very confident young girl and very bubbly, I would say, very energetic and bubbly, and a bit of a tomboy, but also loved Barbies, loved dressing up, and loved the idea of modelling, basically from a very young age.
So what were you like at school? Did you get good grades or just middle of the road? How did schooling go for you?
Primary school, I was really into English and writing. I had a bit of a creative eye, I think, so I would always want to write kind of children's book stories and do the illustrations for them as well. So I was a bit creative and sporty. I never really loved maths or science, kind of the more academic classes. Even throughout high school, I really struggled to stay focused in those classes. I was very easily distracted, and definitely towards the end of high school I did make the most of it, I suppose, to build my social skills more than than my academic ones.
Can you remember discussions with your parents around this time? I mean, it sounds like you were a bit similar to me at school. I don't know how your parents handled the situation where you were easily distracted.
Yeah, I think both my parents, I think the really fortunate thing that both my brother and I grew up with was very supportive parents that just wanted us to find happiness, and, you know, their idea of success was us finding a job or a life where we were happy and content. So we didn't get that, I suppose, extra pressure. There's already so much pressure on kids to kind of already have it figured out what you want to go, what direction you want to go in life. They were very much supportive of the kind of aspirations and dreams that I had, even though they weren't necessarily maybe what was deemed as what was going to work out for me. Modelling was one of those things.
And what were they doing? What were your parents' jobs?
So my dad, he's worked in a number of different companies, but he's worked in an electrical company in the office, and he currently works for Adairs, helping shops kind of pull out old things and taking it back to the factory. So he's a bit of a trades guy. And then my mum, she's worked in HR, so people and culture her whole life, yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, so you've talked about what you were like at school. What happens after school? What's your first job? Can you recall?
So I started working before I finished school. I did modelling for a few years when I was a young girl, and then I stopped. And basically from 14 to 9 months, I got a part-time job. I was working at Baker's Delight till I was 18, and I loved it. I'm so glad that my parents encouraged me to get a part-time job. I think when I was young, I think it taught me a lot. And it was also just their way of saying, you know, if you want to go out and do all these things or you want to buy these things, you've got to earn your own money and do so. So there's a lot of good lessons in that. And then as soon as I finished school, I really had no idea what direction I wanted to go in with study, but I did still have this yearning to get into the modelling industry. So after speaking to my parents, Mum said, all right, well, have a part-time job on the side so you still got something, and maybe talk to your friends, see how they're going with their studies, and maybe by the end of the year you'll figure out what direction you want to go in. But again, there was no, I think, pressure to figure it out quickly, and they were quite happy to support me in trying modelling, and I was really fortunate it worked out.
So when you say try modelling, what does that mean? How do you go and try modelling?
Yeah, it's I made it sound very simple. I mean, I was really, really lucky. I had signed with an agency towards the end of high school that I won't name any names, but it wasn't a great one. And I only learnt later about the reputation that they had. And it didn't seem right from the get-go, but I was just excited for the opportunity. So
well, when you're young, you don't know what you don't know, right? Like,
exactly.
So how would you know? Yeah.
Exactly. But I did a test shoot. So a test shoot is basically when you do a free shoot just to get content to put in your book. And I met a photographer who I'm still friends with to this day. And she kind of pulled me aside on the shoot and she was like, I think you could do really well when you finish school. I think you could do really well in this industry, but I think you need to be with a different agency. And that's kind of all she said to me. But I got a lot out of even just her saying that. So I was really fortunate. She connected me with a couple of different agencies. She said, we'll introduce you to Chadwick's first and you can go and have a casting with them and then we'll go from there. I met with them, I think, January after I finished high school, and I was signed a couple of days later with Chadwick, and they're still my modelling agency to this day.
Okay. So you get signed with a modelling agency. Cool. Yeah. What does that involve then? What kind of shoots are you doing? Is it mostly in Australia? Do you end up going overseas?
So at the start, it's mainly test shoots. So you're mainly working with photographers who you pay for some shots, or who maybe work through the agency and do that as a bit of a favour, but to build up your book and to start casting to different brands. So I started there, and I think one of my first jobs was with Cotton On down in Geelong. It was for their online store, but it was just my bottom half, like it was just the pants. And then after working with them, they booked me the next week, and I ended up having them as a weekly client of mine for years. And I would go down to Geelong every week and work for them, but my face was in it from that point.
We'll have a discussion during this podcast about the modelling industry and then the impact, and we can talk about perhaps the negative sides of modelling. But before we get to that, can we talk about then the journey? So how long do you model for?
Yeah, I mean, I still do parts today if I find a brand that aligns with Kik and what we're doing and it can fit into the schedule. I still like to, it's still a passion of mine. But full-time modelling, I was doing that from 2011 till about 2018.
Okay. And if you still do it, which means you pick brands that you sort of love, what is it about modelling that you really enjoy? What is it about that job?
I really enjoy it. I think it's exciting and different every time. And I think it's just an awesome process as well, watching how it all unfolds behind the scenes and then how it comes out to the rest of the world to see.
Just by the by, I mean, if you could bottle the confidence and sell that, that'd be something. Now, Steph, so in this journey, along the way, you'll meet your co-founder of Kik. So Laura Henshaw, she's a model at this particular point in time too. You guys meet each other in your career?
Yes, we did, yeah.
Can you actually just remember the day, or was it just more, it's just you sort of bumped into each other over time and then you sort of became friends?
So it was Melbourne Fashion Week, I think 2013. It was the first time either of us had done Melbourne Fashion Week. It was the last time I did it as well. But it was just one of those things where we saw each other casting for the same kind of shows in a lot of the fittings, and we just started talking and hanging out, and one of those friendships that you feel like you've known the person for a really long time, even though you've just met. That's kind of how I like to explain it. She was giggly. She was really sweet. You could tell she was a bit shy, a bit nervous. And I think she was gravitated towards my confidence. And we just kind of hit it off from the get-go.
Okay. But it's not at Melbourne Fashion Week you decide to come up with this idea for Kik. And for those listening, sort of the earlier iteration of this is Keep It Cleaner, but it's now known as Kik. So where do you go in this? You go in different tangents. Is that correct?
Yeah. So basically from that point, I mean, we were obviously still friends and connected online, but I ended up moving to the States for about a year, and Laws did a couple of months in Europe as well. And in that time, we both stepped into a completely different market within the modelling industry, and unfortunately lost ourselves a little bit. I mean, for me personally, as I've kind of mentioned multiple times on this podcast already, I had a lot of confidence in who I was. I was really fortunate that my career was going really well in Australia. I had a really great client base, but I just had that itch to, I suppose, have that almost like badge of honor of being an international model.
And was there models at the were you looking up to particular people? Did you think I want to be like that person at all?
Yeah. I mean, at the time you think about people like Miranda Kerr, who obviously made it overseas with some really global clients, and then she's just so well known in Australia, and that was kind of my aspiration, that level. And so going overseas for me, it was like I had these few clients in mind that I really wanted to work with, and I knew it wasn't going to be as simple as, just going over there and having a casting and it all working out. But as I said, I was pretty confident and I was just excited for the adventure. But I think what I didn't realize was how different my relationship with my agent at home is to, I suppose, a new relationship overseas. And my agency overseas did not see me as a person, and they didn't treat me like a person. I was basically just another coat hanger on the books that had to have a certain measurement, and they didn't really care how I got there. So it was very eye-opening. I met a lot of other models, and a lot of models that I had truly aspired to be, Victoria's Secret angels, these people that I'd thought were absolute perfection, and met them and heard them talk so poorly about their bodies. And it was a crazy experience, because it was through that process that I realized, like, is anyone actually happy with themselves and their body? Does anyone ever get to that point?
And so which city are you in at this point in time?
New York.
New York. Okay, so you're in New York. Feels incredibly more cutthroat than your experience in Australia. You're seen as measurements rather than a person, but you've turned up to New York extremely confident. You're a confident young woman. What happens to your confidence over that journey?
I start to get changed like 20 times before I leave the house, like just trying to find something that I look the smallest in, basically. I rock up at castings with self-doubt already flooding my head, thinking, why am I even here? I'm not going to get this. I mean, there was a point where my agency even took me offline and off the books and stopped sending me to castings until I was worthy of being represented by them, which was really hard for me to swallow. And I think the hard thing as well is I'd made a commitment. Like I'd gone over there. I didn't want to just give up and go home. I really wanted to try and make it work. So I would do test shoots, or I'd do whatever I could to make it look like I was working, because it was almost like I was ashamed to go back as a failure, really. So I was trying everything. And unfortunately, the relationship that I had with movement as a kid, I loved it. I loved sport. I loved moving my body, and even with food, I had quite a balanced relationship with food. And so for that to completely flip on its head, and for food and movement to be completely tied to just being as small as possible, it was a super unhealthy place to be, for sure.
You're driven because you had this ambition. You sort of saw these leading models. You mentioned how you really sort of saw Miranda Kerr and thought, gosh, I want to be not necessarily Miranda Kerr, but get to that sort of level. Does someone else have to point out to you what's happening to you, how you're starting to change as a person, or do you become self-aware that you're just not liking yourself in this situation anymore?
It's really interesting. I think that's one thing that I'm incredibly proud of myself. My entire life, I've been really self-aware. And whilst there was definitely a moment when I was living overseas that I had lost a bit of that because I fell into the trap, I did get to a point where I was like, this is just not right, and this isn't sustainable, and you've lost your bubbliness, you've lost your confidence. Like, what are you doing? And started to become a little bit homesick. And it wasn't actually that long ago. I actually looked back at emails between me and my agency at the time. And it's funny because when I look back, sometimes I can just reflect and think, oh, I was so lost. I was so crippled and small and, so not myself. But then I'll look back at some of these email correspondences, and there was points where I really stood up for myself, and I would say stuff back to them like, surely there's a beauty client, I can do something about skincare, my body measurements shouldn't matter then, or a hair client or something. And I would talk back to them, and I was really proud to look back at that, because I'm like, okay, so there was always like a little part of me that was still there.
I get the sense that you're someone who doesn't really take no for an answer. There'll be something that you'll
not
find
when
out.
there's something that I want. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And so what happens along this journey? So you keep in touch with your friend Laura, who's on the other side of the planet, but still in the modelling industry. Is she experiencing something similar?
Yeah. So Laura is, on paper and in real life, A-type personality, perfectionist. And unfortunately, what that meant for her when she started to really focus on the way that she looked was, it was like, okay, how can I possibly get smaller? Okay, calorie counting, it's restricting this, it's restricting that, and became quite obsessive with it. So whilst our, the habits that we formed were quite different, the reason behind them being completely tied to our aesthetics and, valuing that in ourselves above anything else, that was what we aligned on. So we both came home to Australia and opened up with each other about that. We'd kind of started to speak about it online, and we caught up when we got home. And I think it's one of those things when you have disordered eating habits or thoughts about your body like that, I think it's becoming a little less taboo now to talk about, but certainly at the time I wasn't talking to many of my close, high school friends about it, or even my mum. I didn't open up to my mum about it for a while because I think I just thought, you wouldn't be able to relate and you're not going to be able to help me or anything like that. And so Laura and I think we just felt like we could relate to each other. But unfortunately, it was after connecting with each other, I then opened up about it online, and by 2014 I had about 400,000 people following me. So I had grown quite a community. And as soon as I started opening up and being vulnerable online about it, I was just inundated, unfortunately, with so many stories from women and young girls that were so similar.
When you say you were online, was it online where?
Instagram.
So you set up, you've got your Instagram page, which was your model. Was it your page that you were using for your modelling?
Yeah.
And then it sort of shifts to you talking about your really personal experience from it.
Yeah, so I started Instagram as soon as I left high school because I wanted to show my friends and family my modeling career and show them what I got up to. And from there, I just started to grow a following, and I just kind of shared a lot of different aspects of my life. I really loved sharing the entire journey. And so I've always been really authentic online. It's not like it was just a modeling account where I just put up the campaign photos or anything like that. It was always a lot of behind the scenes, a lot of my personal life. And so I think people just started to really resonate with me on those kind of aspects, and then just find the modeling, I suppose, exciting to watch.
You grow a following, you're sharing your experiences, you're talking to Laura about this, and somewhere along the lines you two decide we're going to create a business in this area, which is sort of trying to break that cycle, that sort of, maybe it's channeling your obsession into a different way.
The business came about because, we both knew now after connecting with our communities that it was much bigger than just people in the modeling industry. And we wanted to help people either avoid it completely, or if they were in it, know that there was another way of looking at food and exercise, know that there was another way to treat your body. And for us, it started with an ebook, and that was purely just because I had a dream that we created an ebook together, and I told Laura about this dream. And she had a food blog at the time, and I was like, you've got really great recipes on there. I've got recipes that I, repeat make. I think we could come together and make this ebook. And she was like, no one's going to buy that. And who's going to pay for that? And I was like, well, you never know. Like, why don't we just give it a go?
And you seriously had a dream about it?
I had a dream about it. Yep.
Okay.
So random, but it was a dream. And ebooks were really big at the time, mind you. Like, a lot of them were kind of coming out and happening. Kayla, It Signs Her, Bikini Body Guide ebook was huge at the time. And so, we got my friend from high school who had just started design. He was studying design. He kind of put it together visually. We Googled how to pull it together and had a fashion photographer that we both work with shoot it. Had my mum help us out on the day and shot it at my auntie's house and banged together an ebook.
Wow. So the business of Kick didn't start from that get-go. It was a sort of a series of steps. Is that right? So the ebook comes first.
So the ebook, I should mention as well, because I always talk about it like it was a bit of a passion project, which it was. However, we were working with different brands at the time through Instagram. I had a lot of brands that wanted to continue working with me, so I knew I had an engaged audience, and we got 2 brands involved that became sponsors of the ebook. So from the get-go, we were making revenue.
Okay. So you get money for it. So you're making revenue from the get-go.
Yeah.
Did you have an idea at that point that you wanted to do sort of the fitness component and create this app, or was it just a series of steps that got you there? How does it work?
So the next step for us was turning Laura's food blog into a subscription blog, and on that subscription blog, we did include workouts. So we had made a few friends in the industry who were PTs that were happy to share a workout every month. And that's how that started, because I think once you do an ebook, that's all well and good. But then when you see people enjoying it and wanting more, you want to provide them with more. And a subscription blog felt like the right thing to do at the time. So we did that. And then the next step from there was working with a third party on a web app program. And simultaneously to that, at the same time, we also launched our grocery business, Keep It Cleaner Grocery.
Okay. There's a few things going on there. Can I focus on the third-party app? So you both obviously work out. So you've got the subscription blog. You're thinking, we can make a business of this. We want to do an app. But between the two of you, I mean, you've done modelling, got your recipes. We're going to assume you don't know how to code.
Mm-hmm. Definitely don't know how to code.
And so it's that you just think, we'll find someone who can do this app for us and build the app. How did that process go? Was it everything that you hoped it would be? Were there challenges amongst that? And is that third-party app provider still with you, or did you go separate ways?
So in 2017, we had a different program, and that was with the third party who basically they ran the business and we were the talent, and they had almost like a white label product where they could kind of pull together a program and we were the talent. The thing is though, is we were so passionate about what we were doing and had such a strong connection to the community that we felt like we could be of more use in the other aspects of the business other than just being the talent. So we kind of got to this point where we realized if we wanted health and wellness to be even more accessible, it needed to be an app. It couldn't just be a website. We needed to have all the added features that an app could have. But we were getting quoted things like $1 million for the app that we wanted to create. And the business that we were with were not interested in going down that path at that time. But we were really eager to. So we decided to leave that. And that was definitely hands down the biggest risk we have ever taken in our business to date, was leaving that company and going off on our own, because contractually what it meant was we had to leave our entire database behind, all of the content, everything was lost other than our Instagram account. That was all that we still had.
So just to clarify, so you've got your personal Instagrams, but there was a subscription blog that then morphs into
Keep It Cleaner.
Keep It Clean. But that's an app with the third party. So it was an app at this point with the third party?
So Keep
It
Cleaner,
a blog?
Keep It Cleaner, the brand, has kind of, that's been the thing that we've been able to house all of our different opportunities under. So our Keep It Cleaner Instagram is always from day dot been owned by Laura and I.
By you,
And so when we had the other program, we would promote that through our Keep It Cleaner Instagram.
Sure. Okay. So you've got the other program.
Yeah.
But they're the ones who have got the people who have paid up to pay for the recipes, to pay for the workouts, all that sort of stuff. So all that stuff you've been building up and all the data collection, everything from this early stage business, you and Laura decide that it's not, in order to grow it and what you want to do and make it, this particular company is not going to be the one for you.
Yeah.
And so you sit down and you decide, we're going to walk away from, a few years of this stage of building it up with this third party?
So it was actually only 9 months by the time that we had that discussion. And the way that we planned it out, Laura and I, we stayed up late one night, and I think we were writing on either the back of a napkin or some paperwork in my house. And Laura just basically wrote out a bit of a financial plan to see like what situation we're in right now, what our team might need to look like and how we could afford it from there. And neither of us had any idea, but she definitely had a great background. She was studying law and business, so she was a little bit more, I suppose, switched on in that area than I was.
And did you work out at that point how much money you would need to invest? Because you're going to go out on your own and you want to build up your app, and you're telling me that people were quoting you $1 million.
Yeah.
Were you thinking that you were going to go raise money and find $1 million? What were you thinking?
No. So we went, and Laura, a family friend of Laura's, she met with him. He owns a games company, a game app developer company, and he just said that, why don't we go into business together and we can help like build the app for you. So we went into a rev share model with that company, and that's how we were able to afford it. So there wasn't this upfront, $1 million payment for this app, which we absolutely could not afford.
Because if everyone's listening to this, they're like, okay, tell us how Stephanie, how did she get $1 million?
No, but I will say, like, we were really, really fortunate in that, because we had other things going on outside of Kick, we kept a lot of the money in the business in those first few years. Like we took some of it out, but we kept a lot of it in there. So that also gave us, some leeway and flexibility, of course, when we went off on our own. But it was really risky because even, again, contractually, we couldn't tell any of our subscribers that there was something else coming, but we had to tell them that it was shutting down, the other program. And it was really sad because there was mums of users who were like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've never seen my young daughter have any kind of relationship with food and exercise that she's having now, and you girls have just changed her life. And there was people who were quite upset, and we couldn't say, don't worry, there's something coming, right until the last minute.
When we come back, I'm going to talk about this journey because you're breaking hearts all over the place. You've built up this subscriber base. You and Laura behind the scenes know what you've got to do, but you're taking a massive risk, a massive punt here that you're going to go and invest in yourselves to build something bigger and better. So when we come back, we'll talk about how that journey goes, some of the twists along the way, and where you're taking Kick next. So Steph, we've chatted about the early parts of your career, going into modelling, this big dream you had, and then how the industry got pretty bleak. It knocked your confidence. You had an unhealthy relationship with food, with exercise. It wasn't the person you were growing up. But out of that, you end up creating a business with a friend of yours, Laura Henshaw, and it's to help people break that cycle, to have a better relationship with food and movement. And so you've got Keep It Cleaner, you're with a third party, and then you decide we want to turn this into something that this third party can't do. So we're going to go out on our own. And you have to shut down the first business, and you can't tell anybody that you're doing that. There's contractual obligations there. So how long is it, Steph, from you shutting down, from saying, sorry, I'm really sorry we built something you loved and we're going to shut it down, to you starting up the new iteration of it?
So there was 3 months. Basically, we had 3 months to create the app because we didn't want there to be any downtime between the other program closing down and the app launching, because obviously, our users could have gone to one of our competitors instead. And so we wanted to try and close the gap as much as possible. So in the background of the other program kind of coming to an end, we were working away and creating the app with this company, and getting it all together, getting all the content shot. And it was actually, we started, so I think once the other one shut down, that was when we could say, okay, something's coming, and it was coming within that week. And so we were very loud about it in that week, and we're like, it's only days away.
Right.
And something that we started with, which we have kept, within the business to this day, was a lot of authenticity and I suppose, realness of what's going on. Our community get to see a lot of the behind the scenes. So even in that launch week, we had to tell them, look, it's a couple more days away. That things aren't perfect and we're not ready to launch it yet, but it's coming. And we were really honest about that process. Yeah.
You had a launch date and then you had to extend it out. Can you remember what exactly was it one moment that went wrong in that launch week, or was it just a series of things we were a bit ambitious?
So from my memory, we were able to launch the website part of it. So we launched that platform, but the app was a couple of days late. And I think it was just through testing, there was just things that weren't quite right. But it was, I think, one of the best moments I can remember it so clearly, because we went out for dinner and celebrated afterwards, was we left the other company, and when we relaunched with more subscribers than what we had with the last program, which was incredible.
Yeah. That is fascinating. And you mentioned it was a connection through Laura that you have a revenue sharing model. Is it still a revenue sharing model? Is that something you would recommend to people where they say you just might not have the startup capital to get this off the ground? If someone can help you out, has it worked out for you?
It certainly worked for us. I think the only thing to be mindful of, I think, if you're a tech company and you're wanting to truly own that, is owning your own IP, which we obviously didn't at that point. So it was 2021 when we brought tech in-house. And that just worked well. It was the right timing for both companies, for both us and those developers. And that was a wild ride in itself, because working with a dev company for a couple of years is one thing. You get a little bit of an understanding, but we weren't truly in the behind the scenes with them every single day. So when it came to hiring our own dev team and engineering lead, that was That was a lot. That was really hard. For two people that don't have any tech background, that was really hard because we had to kind of rely on, different people that had a little bit more expertise and really just go with our gut feel.
When you say that, can I just because it is something interesting here. So you founded a business. It's a startup. Yes, it's in health and wellness, but essentially tech is driving this. It's a tech company. And you need people to develop it for you. You need people with these specialist skills. But it's hard for you to know if they're any good at that sort of stuff, right? So when you say you go with your gut, what is that, or what are the specific things you're looking for in those employees who could make or break your company?
Just that we were going to be able to communicate with them and be on the same page with what we were doing for our community. Like, it was really important to us that, everyone in our team, not just the developers, every single person in our team know the impact they're having on people's lives and are on board with that. Because it means that if something's going wrong with the app and we need people to jump on it, they understand why it is so important that we do it in that moment because they understand the impact that we're having to that community. It's a little bit different if a game app stops working for like a day or so because that's probably not too bad for the gamer on the other side. Like, they probably might need a break. But, for someone who's using something as a tool to work on their relationship with themselves and everything like that, it means a lot to them. And for a lot of our users, it is like a daily practice. So that was really important. And other than that, it was really just you got to get them on board and work with them for a period of time. It's like hiring anyone. You've got to, like, people can interview incredibly well and then culturally they might not be the right fit, or maybe their expertise wasn't as, accurate as maybe you thought it was. And you've just got to work with people and understand who's going to work with your team best. And because we'd already had the marketing kind of side of the team built up and the app was already built, we just needed people to come in and manage it and monitor it for a period of time. We weren't expecting a new team to come on board and for us to just like keep dropping in new features and all this new stuff.
Yep.
We knew that it was going to be a bit of a process in building the right team and getting comfortable. So, yeah.
And how does the growth go? So I'm just going to have to get the timeline happening here. So when do you leave the first third party? So you're setting up on your own, that moment where you're launching and the launch is delayed. What time period are we at?
So we launched in 2018.
2018. Okay. Yeah. And then in 2021 you bring the tech in-house.
Yeah.
Okay. So in those early days, back in 2018, those first couple of years, is it sort of just slowly build on the subscriber base, or does it go gangbusters? And are there any issues that emerge from that? So in the early stages of growing a company, can you remember those days?
It was a slow build until COVID, to be honest, and the entire online fitness industry all got a booster because suddenly people didn't have any other option but to work out from home. Yeah, we saw huge growth in that time. But I think what was important for us then was not just being able to look after those who were subscribed to our app, but it was our wider community too. So we were doing heaps of free workouts online and live workouts and everything through that time to continue to support people in that. Because, financially for a lot of people, it was a really hard time, obviously. And then it was really after COVID when things started to go back to normal, which was, when the online fitness industry was tested. But fortunately for us, I think because of the brand's values and what we offer is such a huge, wide variety that can be such a great hybrid to, I suppose, working, outside of an app as well.
So what happened to numbers? So when you say it was steadily grew and then COVID hit, was there a surge? Did numbers grow, your subscriber base? I don't know, was it 20 or 30% in a year? I don't know if you can recall those sorts of figures, but was it quite significant where you go, oh, wow, okay. And did it put any challenges on the business?
It was significant. And I think the challenges that we saw on the business was then from there, it was really hard to kind of track trends and understand, what's a normal amount of growth and what can we expect month on month, like when we were planning ahead, because we had all these wild numbers that were likely to never happen again.
Okay.
So that was probably the biggest challenge. But other than that, we were just, along for the ride like everyone else in that space.
And then thankfully lockdowns end.
Yes.
And then I feel like people just really, they went back to shopping centres and they went back to gyms. It almost went, the pendulum swung hard the other way. So did that knock the business around too? And did you have to sort of recalibrate during that period?
From what we know of the market, it didn't knock us around as much as a lot of our competitors. And I think that was just because of the breadth of our content and how we complement people's lifestyles. We don't overhaul people's lifestyles with certain challenges or anything that they, feel like they can't do anything else outside of doing Kick. And we have such a breadth of content. A lot of people just have a subscription so they can access our recipes. And, they might still do their Pilates classes or have their PT at their gym. But then for a lot of people, we are the much more affordable option. And I think what COVID did do when people were kind of forced into working out from home was it made people realize that you don't have to have that environment of a gym or a class to find the motivation to move and to be grateful for being able to move. And so it did mix up a lot of people's habits and lifestyles and routine. And yes, there was absolutely a lot of people, like a lot of my friends included, who were just so excited to get back to their classes and, do things in person again. Absolutely, no doubt. But because we're such an affordable option, a lot of people have continued to do both.
Okay. All right. Can I talk to you about managing a business, growing a business with someone who's also a very close friend? What does it do to relationships? How do you navigate conflict? If there's people listening to this, often I find people have great ideas and they'll team up with a friend, and often we get told don't do business with friends or family.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. Did your relationship change through this journey, and were there challenges with working with a really good friend who's also your business partner?
I think what's really interesting about mine and Laura's relationship is that for the most part, we have been working together. So we only met in 2013, and then we were both, away in 2014. And it was at the end of that year that we went into business together. So it was, for the most part, that's the relationship we've known, is being working best friends. Although we are like sisters, we don't always see eye to eye on everything. We think that's really important in a partnership anyway. We do have different skill sets and different backgrounds, but I think the thing that has tied us together and the reason why it's worked is because our personal values are so aligned to the business values, and our mission has stayed the same since day one. And that's really, really important to us. So we are both driven by the same things, which is super important. But it doesn't mean that there isn't conflicts or disagreements. And the bigger the business has gotten and, the more pressure we're under, maybe because the team is bigger or the expectations are higher, absolutely it can cause that kind of pressure. But the biggest thing we've been working on and ensuring is happening, and the advice that I would give to any other co-founders or people that are thinking about going into business with someone close to them, is you've got to be able to be 100% honest with each other and just be able to have those really tough conversations and communicate as much as possible. Because any time where we've held back on those kind of conversations just because we care so much about each other and we don't want to hurt each other's feelings, it's just bottled up and been made so much worse in our own minds than the reality. So, yeah.
Okay. So it's perhaps the advice there is don't let things fester. If something's, if you disagree or there's an annoyance or frustration, you just got to air it.
100%. And I think if you haven't gone into business with that person yet, the other advice I would have is just, again, ensure that you're both super aligned on why you're getting into business in the first place and what your goals or ambitions are for that business, and be clear on that. And also be okay if that changes. I mean, as we are all human, we can change our mind on things, or, our priorities in life can change and all that sort of stuff. But you've just got to continue to be open with your partner.
Okay. Can I talk to about when you're a founder, so you're both co-founders, and then you've got a young son.
Yeah, he's almost 3. Yeah.
When you're a founder, you after having a baby, it's a magical time. Now that he's 3, you can think it's a magical time. At the time, it doesn't feel magical when you've got a newborn. But were you thinking about what would happen with the business to take time away? Was it a difficult decision, or were you a person that's like, we just got to roll with it. Life happens and we'll just work this out as we go?
I am a bit of a life happens, and I am a bit of a, throw me a challenge and we'll get through it. Or I look at failure very differently. In that that's just life. Yeah. Learn something and move on. So I think when it comes to having Harvey, my son, I mean, that was definitely, I feel like I was put on this planet to to be a mum. Like I knew I'd wanted kids from a very, very young age. And if it wasn't for modeling, I probably would have tried even younger. And I think for me, it just felt like the right time. It felt like the right time in our family. And it was also, not that it was strategic at all, but after I was pregnant, what that enabled me to do was connect to a part of our community that we weren't able to relate to. So there was women in our community for years asking us for pregnancy safe workouts or, things to do while they were pregnant and then that postpartum period. And as much as we could obviously get the experts on to do their thing, it just didn't feel right not being able to connect with them on that level and kind of communicate with them about their experiences, even though everyone's is quite unique. And I think after I became pregnant, I then realized why it was coming up so much, because what was online and what was available was either so contradictory or just so far from what I wanted. And so I was like, all right, we need to do something. We need to do something for this community. And so I think whilst obviously having him, added some complexities into, how much time I was in the business, especially in those early days and everything like that, it also enabled us to connect with a wider community, which has added so much value to our company. But I was a bit of a guinea pig. Neither Laura or I knew what to expect with motherhood. I also didn't have many friends or family members at the time who had gone through it. So I really didn't know what to expect of, where my head was going to be at and what I was going to want. And I think from the get-go, I was still really interested in what was happening in the business day to day and what we were working on and all of that sort of stuff. So I wasn't in the office in the early days, but I was still doing like the weekly leadership meeting. I was recording for the podcast, and I just eased my way back into a couple of days into the office, 4 days into the office, and then back to, I suppose, full-time with the team. So it was a bit of a gradual process, but I was just wondering whether you felt any pressure just being a founder, because I think there are some unique things that come from having your own company. So one is you can sort of dictate your own terms in a way, but then also you are the founder, like you've got Laura obviously, but did you feel sort of this pressure to be a person that you might have at the time be struggling to be? Yeah, it was different because I was navigating, I used to refer to Kik as my baby, and suddenly I had a human baby. So I could quite see the difference from that point. And, my priorities did shift, and I think the way that I was looking at the world and looking at things shifted a bit as well. So it took time for me to navigate how my drive was now going to suit the business. I mean, the thing is though, since having Harvey, whilst he's a new and different kind of priority in my life, it's only instilled in me that drive to want to make a difference even more. Like I'm still very much passionate about our community that we help and wanting to grow that and continue to cultivate and nurture them. And I think because I just keep imagining him getting older and his friends and what he's going to grow up with, and hoping that we can change, how people look at themselves and look at food and exercise. Can we talk then about social media? Because that might be a nice segue to this, because your business was fueled from it. I mean, you got this following and this base of people that you could then use as a launchpad for Kik. But then there's this flip side of social media, and you mentioned Harvey, and I've got a young daughter, and all I can think about is, can social media cease to exist by the time she reaches high school? How do I work out a way to kill it off? But having said that, social media has created all of these other businesses. So can we just have a discussion about just how you navigate social media, the pros and the cons? And would you be able to start or found the business that you and Laura have got today, just given how much social media has changed? Yeah, it's a really interesting one because, I mean, one part of me wants to say, like, it's so much harder now to grow a brand, whether that's a personal brand or not, on social media now than it was back then. However, there is also so many different platforms now, like the likes of TikTok. I've seen people go from having 100 followers to 1 million within a year. So there's there's so many different ways, and a lot of it is luck, and it's getting on a viral video, and it's just understanding who you're talking to and just really nailing that niche or that audience. So I think there's definitely still ways of doing it, but it's certainly different. And we just, as a team, like our social media team, we just constantly have to keep our finger on the pulse to understand what these different platforms are doing and who we're talking to on each of them. And we do use them a little differently when it comes to promoting Kick or talking to them about Kick. But I think you can still absolutely launch a business on social media and build it, but you've got to show your authenticity. I think if you're a founder, don't be afraid to show your face. People love communicating with a human and connecting with a human. And I think when you hear about a brand and they've got great values, that's awesome. But then when you're able to kind of connect that to the founder's story and understand why it was even created in the first place, you buy into it so much more. So I would definitely say be open to sharing your story and yourself in the growth of that. I mean, and that's not for everyone, mind you. Like there are people who absolutely want to be in the background. But I just think where you can show your authenticity and what's really behind the business is definitely what's going to cut through on social media as well.
But that involves putting yourself in the firing line a lot of the time. Like social media, I'll be honest with you, sometimes I'll be in there and dabbling. It can be a nasty place, Steph. So how do you navigate that? And have you got any advice for founders who might be saying, yep, I've just got to put myself out there, but, you know, it can be a minefield.
Yeah. You're not going to please everyone. You're not going to please everyone in life as an individual, but you're also not going to please everyone with your business. You can't tick every single box. It's just not possible. I think it was Michelle Andrews who said something, podcaster from Shameless. She said Taylor Swift is a really good example of this. Like if you're a fan of Taylor Swift, you couldn't fathom someone not liking her, but there are Taylor Swift haters out there, right? And so, you know,
haters going to hate.
If there's someone exactly, haters going to hate. So if you can think of someone like Taylor Swift, who is obviously a creative genius and like is incredible at what she's done, had so much success and has cultivated this incredible community, even she has haters. So you're not going to be able to please everyone and your product can't please everyone, but you can just do the best that you can and try to understand the community that you are serving as best as you can.
Okay. Can we talk about building a following? So you did very well initially and then it grew from there. But if people are listening to this and they're trying to navigate socials, so what should people focus on? Is it more important to really build your number of followers, or is it actually about engagement? Like, how do all these different algos work? Algorithms. Yeah. And has that shifted over time? So you'd actually have to shift how you built your business?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, followers helps because you're obviously reaching more people. However, if you don't have the engagement, it's kind of pointless. So it's obvious, like we've understood who we are talking to and our community we think better than anyone. So we're continuously trying to grow that engagement and ensure that what we are putting out there is still serving them. It's still educating them, it's still entertaining them, and they still have a reason to want to follow us and to buy into the product, of course. When it comes to followers, like if there's a new market you're going into, like obviously it helps to grow your following in those markets, but you don't always have control unless you're paying for it. So growing your following at the moment, if you don't have the money for it, if there's any way that you can partner with people, we've seen great success in that. So partnering with other brands who align with your values, who might have similar kind of communities that might enjoy your product, that's a really, really great way to grow. And as I said before, just being able to show a lot of authenticity online, because that's what people relate to and that's what they want to see more of.
So when you say partner with other brands, does that mean perhaps sort of give your product to the other brand, don't worry about it so much because you're going to sort of leverage their following or their base that will hopefully generate revenue for you in the longer term?
Yeah, and it's like it's doing, I mean, people do things like giveaways or events or collaborations, and that's brand on brand. Then there's obviously like the personal brands of like influencers and stuff like that. It's not cheap. Like you have to pay to play, I suppose, but some influencers will do things for free. Some influencers are incredibly grateful for every opportunity and everything that they receive and are able to fit it in and share your product. And if that happens, suddenly your product is in like thousands of people's feeds. So it's just one of those things that you've got to just keep getting out there and testing it and getting people. It's like word of mouth, but online. You just got to get it in front of as many people as you can.
As part of the podcast series, we've asked people if they're starting a company or they're growing their company. We've mentioned that we're talking to people like you and other people who are featured on one of the Financial Review Rich lists. Just for your advice, what would you tell them? And so one of these people has got in touch. So Amy found, she is the founder of a company called Found My Skin. It's making sunscreen and it's plastic free.
Amazing.
And she's set up this sunscreen business. And so she wanted to know, and I think this is actually quite good for you, seeing as you spoke about confidence early in our conversation, but she wanted to know that particularly in the industry you're in health and fitness, it's a very it's a cluttered market. There are lots of people in it. You're up against some really big players. Mm-hmm. So she wants to know, Amy wants to know, how do you keep your confidence when you're up against really big brands and so much competition and they've got deep pockets? How do you keep your confidence?
I think, look, you've started your business for a reason. You obviously saw that there was a gap in the market. And so back yourself on that feeling. And if it's something that you're truly passionate about, every hurdle that will come up along the way, you'll be able to get over it and learn from it. And so just try and, if you can't always find that confidence in yourself, try and surround yourself with people who do believe in you and what you're doing. I find that super helpful. I can't always be the biggest cheerleader for myself, but as long as I've got those people in my life, I'll just spend a little bit more time with them and feel a little bit better about what I'm doing. Because when you do compare yourself to what you see online, I mean, for everyone else and what they'll project online, particularly if they're business leaders or companies, they're going to show the highlights. They'll show what's going right and not necessarily what's going wrong in the background. So just remember that comparing yourself to what you see online is never going to be entirely accurate. So just try and cultivate that own confidence that you have in yourself and what you're bringing to the table.
And to Amy's point, I guess when you're up against bigger players and lots of bigger players, I mean, they have big budgets.
Yeah.
They can do things you can only dream about. Is there a way to navigate that? Or have you got advice for people on, you might not have millions and millions of dollars, but how do you compete against it?
I mean, when it comes to online, again, people buy into authenticity, of course, like the bigger brands and everything like that. People know about them. People might shop from them or whatever, but they might not necessarily be inspired by the content that they share or feel like they can relate to it whatsoever. So I do truly believe that if you know your audience and you know who you're trying to sell to, you know them well, if you can relate to them and show that relatability online, like you'll be able to capture them. And you just got to make sure that whatever you're putting out there, there's a reason why they're following you as well as or instead of your competitors.
If I could get you to go back, I don't know if it's 2013, 2014, but maybe 2018, or you can choose a time, but go back to the early days of setting up a Kick. What would you like to tell yourself?
I think it would just be to continue to stay true to yourself, but also don't downplay what you're good at and don't think that you're less than just because your strengths aren't necessarily what fits the mold in your own eyes and maybe societies of what a business leader can look like. I think I put way too much pressure on myself. Still do to this day. It's something that I have to continue to remind myself of. But a lot of even situations like this when I'm speaking, on podcasts like this that are completely business related, or maybe I'm on a panel and there's other business leaders next to me, or like a room full of incredibly impressive women in business, I get really intimidated because I don't always look around and see people with the same skill sets or background of mine that is maybe a little bit more creative. And I think for a long time I let that crush my confidence a little bit in those areas and in those situations. And I think you're no less than just because you have a different set of skill sets, and just don't worry about trying to be good at everything. Just focus on what you are good at and really master those. Just try not to feel less than.
Okay, imposter syndrome, alive and well, it feels like, Steph. Now, look, you've mentioned modelling and you still do a bit of modelling, and obviously you're a founder of Kick and really enjoying it. So you're in your dream job, I'll say.
Yeah.
But just for a moment, just you're waking up tomorrow and you get to have a different job. What would be your dream job? What job do you think you would love to go and have a crack at?
It's so funny because I've really randomly always had this interest, like from such a long time ago. But I think one day it would be a dream to end up on Play School. Like
Play School.
I love kids. I love crafts. I love like dancing, acting, singing, all that stuff. And I just feel like one day if I end up on Play School, that'll be a really cool experience.
Excellent. All right, Play School. And then maybe as just a side note, if anyone who happens to be part of the Bluey franchise is listening, I mean, there's sometimes people who do voiceovers for
that's got to be one of my favourite shows. That's such a good show.
And have you read or listened to a podcast? Don't tell me Kick Pod. We know about Kick Pod. But have you read anything lately, or have you listened to a podcast that's really resonated with you that you could recommend?
Yeah, I actually I noted it down because I'm going through a lot of work on myself at the moment. I've got a coach that I've been engaging with every couple of weeks, and also a therapist. But my coach has recommended 2 incredible books that I've taken a lot from, and I have actually listened to them, but then loved them so much that I then purchased the book and went and like highlighted and doggy ear tagged like certain pages and everything. And those 2 books, one by Glennon Doyle, which is Untamed, Stop Pleasing and Start Living. And it is
I'm writing it down. Untamed.
And it is so good. I'm loving that. And then the other one is The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. I've literally got it in my bag. Like I take it everywhere with me.
Can you show me a copy?
I'll show you. It's just so good.
Oh.
And it's not big, and the text is kind of big, but there are so many incredible life lessons in that book that I took a lot from it.
Okay. And can I just ask, so you've got a coach and a therapist. So what's the coach?
Yeah.
Like, so when you say coach and you're in fitness, I just assume that they're coaching you for fitness, but no, this is
of course
coaching you in life.
So Janie Martino, she's both an advisor for Kick and actually like a business and life coach for myself and Laura as well. And that's really just to help build on the confidence that we have as leaders in our company. But she's got quite a spiritual background, and she's been amazing. I've loved working with her. And then, my therapist on the side. I feel like everyone needs a therapist. It's been amazing.
Wow. Okay. So there's a coach, therapist. The one other thing I want to ask you about is an advisor. They're probably not going to be along the lines of being a coach and a therapist, but you guys have brought in corporate advisors because you want to grow Kick now. You want to take it to the next level. Can you share with us some of those plans? Where do you want to take it, and why do you feel that you and Laura can't do that on your own anymore?
So I think one of the biggest growth directions that we want to take Kick is expanding internationally. So we have got users in over 120 countries, as you mentioned, but predominantly they exist in Australia. And I think once you start to help people and you get testimonials of people saying, this has literally changed my life. Like I am so grateful for the position I'm in now with the way that I look at my body or, feel about exercise and stuff like that. And when you make that impact on people, you want to be able to reach more people and help more people. And, this issue is global. There's no doubt about it. So currently we are putting a lot of effort into research and to the kind of content and everything that makes sense for those different markets, and then also going and visiting the existing users that we have in those places and surveying them and asking them a bunch of questions. So that's definitely a goal, but we've never expanded, outside of what our organic reach has, like our following and everything on those social platforms. Outside of that, we've never expanded overseas before. So there's a lot of lessons and learning in that. And so, basically whenever we go through or we have a direction like that in business, we just try and find other people that have done it before or have helped other people do it. And, we don't know what we don't know, and we're quite comfortable not knowing and trying to learn. And I think that's the advice I'd want to leave to anyone is don't be afraid to ask questions and don't be afraid to reach out and try and make new mentors or advisors along your business journey. The worst thing that could happen is you either don't hear from them or they say, no, sorry, I don't have capacity. And then you're just where you are anyway. So you might be surprised by who would be willing to help you out.
Well, thank you for helping us out today, Stephanie Miller / Steph Claire Smith. We were like a personal trainer to you. We promised you we would be in and out, and of course we made you do another 8 sets, so we've run over time, but I do appreciate you spending some time with How I Made It. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.